saying that I'm biased against Ukraine is laughable. The world is biased against Ukraine. Logic is biased against Ukraine. Human nature is biased against Ukraine. All right, let's bring Scratch on from last night. 18-year-old Scratch. Oh, I heard you
Oh,
talking to someone. You got someone in the room with you, Scratch? Oh,
oh no, I was talking to
oh,
EOD
you're
in the waiting.
talking. Hopefully, he was imparting some wisdom to you. What's happening? How you
Uh,
doing today?
just talking about Trump's awesome negotiating abilities.
What'd you think? You're not a fan, I'm assuming, because you've probably never liked anything Trump did. If he says his favorite food's Taco Bell, you probably hate Taco Bell,
Oh,
right?
I liked when Trump declared the cartels terrorist groups. So I think that was one of
Nice.
the
There's the first base thing you've said.
one thing.
Okay. All right. So what's your
Uh,
take? What's your take on the Trump business today? What do you got?
what's my take?
Yeah.
Zelensky wasn't acting great. But I think the problem right now is that in Zelensky's eyes, Trump gave too many concessions to Russia to the point where he was not up for negotiating a peace deal.
But then
So
why wouldn't he say that when they're negotiating it as opposed to seemingly agreeing to this mineral deal and then going in public and saying, no, 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 no. Doesn't that seem like a pretty amateurish thing to do?
yeah, that's what I originally said.
Well, yeah. So what would you do then? Like if you're in Trump's position and this guy seemingly behind the scenes is like, yeah, 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 this sounds good, and then publicly starts trashing you in front of the press, what would you expect Trump to do in that position?
Um, say that just go against Zelensky. Like,
Just basically do what he did. I don't think Trump or Vance went over the line. It's not like they were like, get the fuck out of here, which actually probably would have been more based, but they just said, like, hey, you're the one who needs our help. We want a ceasefire, and we're glad now that the people could see sort of the challenges we've been facing. We're pushing for a ceasefire, and you're like, no, not unless we get all this other stuff, but we need to stop the bullets flying now. And if you want to walk away, that's fine. God bless you. Good luck with this fight. We don't think it'll go well. I think that's entirely reasonable.
I think I think his reaction was reasonable, but I also think it was a little bit of a failing on Trump's part to not realize how much he was pissing off Zelensky.
Well, no, I think he realized that. I think he absolutely did. I just think he literally doesn't give a shit, which I
Okay,
wouldn't
well,
either. What Trump
okay,
needs nothing from Zelensky, right? At all.
yeah, but if the goal is to have peace in Ukraine, right? This isn't doing it. What?
No, that's absolutely no. Trump's goal is he does want peace in Ukraine. And if one of the two major players is just steadfastly refusing to play ball to the point where he's saying things in public that are up, because you're saying, like, no, Zelensky's not interested at all, but he's pretending to behind the scenes, and then publicly he's going to criticize them. Trump's going to be like, okay, I don't want to deal with this guy. So we'll send you back. You do what you got to do. If you or the Ukrainian people decide to replace you with someone who's more interested in having a peaceful resolution, absolutely, we're willing to talk. Even Trump's statement after this was like, hey, if Zelensky wants to come back and he's serious about peace, absolutely, we're willing to talk. So if Trump's goal is to have a peaceful resolution, what does pissing around with a guy that's never going to accept it? How does that help get a peaceful resolution? You need someone that's negotiating in good faith that understands their position. And basically, what Trump's saying, think about it this way: if Zelensky's being this unreasonable and antagonistic to Trump, how do you think he's going to be to Putin when the United States and Europe tries to sit down as mediators, but to have a peaceful resolution between Zelensky and Putin? How do you think that's going to go? Like, it's not going to
I
go
don't think
well.
the
And
goal,
Trump's entire spiel here is like, listen, you're not coming from a position of strength. In fact, the only strength you have is if we back you. So for you to publicly criticize and say, no, I don't like what you're doing, I don't like this, when in behind closed doors, it's a different thing. Then you come out and you publicly say this. Like, what are you doing?
I no, I agree with you that the way that Zelensky was acting was unreasonable. But do you think it's not unreasonable, like right after what 3 years of war now? 3 years we've been giving them basically money, granting them money, and then Trump comes and it's like, hey, you need to, you basically need to repay us by giving some your mineral, you're giving us some of your minerals. Like, do you not think that was unreasonable of him
It may
on his
be
part, in
unreasonable.
those
Unreasonable to who?
unreasonable to Ukraine?
Sure, they might find that to be very unreasonable. No one's forcing their hand, though, right?
I'm not gonna say that. I'm gonna give you that Zelensky was acting bad, but I'm also gonna say that the way that Trump was acting, I don't think it was leading to actually trying to make a deal with Zelensky.
I
I think it was
disagree.
just
I think it obviously
also,
was.
and I also think that his actions have further encouraged Europe to take more grounds on being able to support Ukraine. Right? We have England over here coming saying, "Hey, we'll support you. We're considering putting boots on the ground if this gets any more serious." To me, there's a ramping up of the war, not a slowing down of it.
Well,
Europe
that's
is
fine.
ready to go in place.
What would you suggest, that the United States intervene and tell Europe that they're not allowed to support Ukraine?
I don't suggest that, no, but I feel
Okay,
like
then
if you're
presumably, let's say that Trump would say, we're only going to send you $10 billion worth of money and weapons next year. And if Europe thought, well, actually 100 billion is necessary, presumably then they'd fill in the other 90 billion. So they're going to do what they're going to do anyways. It's not as if they're like, yeah, we'll give 100 billions worth of stuff unless the United States negotiates 10 billion, and then we'll hold back because the United States at least negotiated something. If they feel that there's a certain effort that needs to be put in order for this to be successful, then that's what they're going to do. I say based. If Europe wants to continue to fund this and the United States could keep its money back home, sounds good to me. That's a win-win. The truth is, Europe can't fund it, just like they can't fund for their own defense. They rely on the United States. That's the truth. Now,
the
when you
EU
talk
was
about unreasonable, let's put this in another context, right?
but
Like, how
I
about
think the
this?
EU.
How about that
Wait,
there's a person,
Rob,
let's say,
you're fact sure. The EU as an entirety was giving more support than America.
that's bullshit. Most of it was guaranteed back, but great. Let's say that it's true. Based, send more. If they're so clearly capable of doing it, great.
That's
Problem
what they're
solved.
doing. That's what they're saying,
Sounds
right?
good. Problem solved.
Wait, Rob. How can I be a president running on a pro-peace, no new wars policy, and then my negotiation tactics aren't no new wars, but no new wars that America is involved in? This is obviously still going to come
So
back.
this is your argument. Trump's like, I want peace. Zelensky's like, nope, I refuse to have peace unless Russia pays for everything and you give us security guarantees like going into NATO. Russia says that's a non-starter. We will never agree to that deal. So Trump's like, listen, let's do a ceasefire first. Zelensky says, nope, we'll never do that. Then Zelensky goes public, disrespects Trump's antagonistic to Trump advance. And your argument is Trump should have bowed to Zelensky, tried to make Russia accept, which will be a non-starter for them when Russia's coming from a position of strength. Because if Trump walks away from the table, then Europe will step in and do the exact same thing that the United States has been doing for the past 3 years. That's your argument.
My position is that Trump shouldn't have gone in, pissed off Zelensky.
He
should have said
Zelensky pissed him
no.
off.
He shouldn't have he shouldn't have said, you need to give us our resources. Sorry, your resources. He shouldn't have done that. He should have said, your claim is unreasonable, Zelensky. But what we're going to do is that we can make you'll have to make some territory concessions, but you can.
I give a shit about, but we talked about this last night. You're a globalist who's poorly thought out your own world ideology. You also claim to be a socialist, libertarian adjacent. You don't know what you're talking about. We went through that last night. The point is, you don't give a fuck about the American people, so you wouldn't understand the interest of the American people footing this bill. You don't give a shit about that, and so you're like, he should have just went in and promised trillions upon trillions. Who gives a fuck if Americans all have to sell their home? It doesn't matter. All he should have been concerned with was appeasing Zelensky to the maximum. Fuck that. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit about that.
What was not my position? When did this conversation did I ever say that? The only thing I said, my entire point here has been that he should have not pissed off Zelensky as much as he did, so he can actually come to a peace deal.
If you live in my house,
you don't give a fuck because you don't care about peace, because that's the thing that made Zelensky blow up in the first place.
Opposite. I do care about peace. If you live on my house and I pay all of your bills, and you decide to be a prick to me, and someone else goes, but Rob, you shouldn't have said things to make Scratch be a prick to you, I'd tell them to go fuck themselves and let you move into their house.
If I'm living in your house for 5 years and we have no problems, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, you need, and then all of a sudden you're like, you need to pay for the last 5 fucking years of rent, and then I'm like, I guess, and then you're like, oh, we're gonna start talking with your fucking ex for some reason. I'm not gonna tell you about it. I'm gonna lie to you about that. And then I'm like, holy shit, I'm fucking pissed off at you. I'm yelling at you. And you're like, oh my gosh, how dare you? Of course he's gonna be mad. What do you think's gonna happen?
I don't give a fuck. Yeah, then Okay. Let's use that exact same scenario, which isn't analogous, but let's use it. Congratulations, you're homeless.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's a good
Okay, you did
negotiation
it. You did it.
part.
You did it.
I'm not saying it's
Now you're homeless. Yeah, the
well
guy
now
that fit the bill for you 5 years says, you know what, I want some of
well
my
now
money back.
well
And
now
you're
now
like,
your
that's
mom now
unreasonable. That's clearly going to piss me off. You asking for some of your money back, clearly that would piss me off. So if you're interested in housing me, you shouldn't ask me for money. Yeah, I don't give a shit about that. Okay, goodbye. No one's forcing you to stay here. See ya.
well
Same
now
with
your mom
Zelensky. He's negotiating from a position of weakness. That's what he's doing. He's the one begging for money. The person that's giving that money has the right to make demands of that money. They
Yeah, you
absolutely
have
do.
your problem is, and I agree that Zelensky acted badly. Your problem is you can't put any kind of impetus on Trump for the fact that some of the things he was doing to negotiate in the first place led to this action happening from Zelensky.
I do
You
not
have
care
to
that Trump I do not care that Trump was pro-American and trying to get things that benefit America as we're in a time of financial crisis and hundreds of millions of dollars are going out the window to Ukraine. I don't give a shit that he asked for money. You saying no, he should have never asked for that money because that would put Zelensky in a bad mood is literally one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard. If Zelensky's not man enough to calm himself and understand that he's the one begging for money, he absolutely had the right to say, I'm sorry, we can't agree to this deal. Clearly, Europe's able to finance us, and so we're going to go with them. Trump would have said, no hard feelings, good luck in your conflict. That would have been the end of it. But Zelensky couldn't do that. If it's true, as you say, that Europe could fund this, then why does Zelensky even consider entertaining this deal to pay back the United States in the first place?
I'm guessing my guess is because America has way better military technology. That's a lot of this shit that we're getting.
So, in other words, then Europe can't offer what the United States is.
Yeah,
Okay.
I bet they can give him a lot of financial support, but when it comes to actual military assets, I'm almost certain America outclasses them.
So I just don't like the idea that, like, oh, Trump asked for something in return and that clearly would upset. I mean, it's just stupidity. Clearly, the person at fault here
Wait, how's
is
stupidity to
Zelensky.
not piss off leaders you're trying to make peace deals with?
Because you're
That's
claiming that
stupidity.
what pissed him off was asking for some of the money back that we gave. That's what you're claiming pissed him off.
Yeah,
Okay, that's stupid. Again, anyone could say that. You're operating as a child who is a socialist and who is a globalist that's like, who gives a fuck if
make an
America...
argument.
Let
Stop
me
calling me a
finish.
child and
I
socialist
am making an
globalist.
argument. I'm making an argument that you're making the
It's not
argument
what the fucking
you're
ad
playing
hominem,
with
bro.
money that's not yours. You're like, yeah, why would you ever ask for the American people's money back? That makes no sense. That makes no sense. Hundreds of billions of dollars makes no sense. Why you would ever ask for money to be
Rob,
repaid? That makes no sense. To even ask that is offensive. That's your
Rob,
position.
if you were if I was on welfare
Mm-hmm.
for 5 years and then the American people came to me and said you have to pay all that back, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
do you think that's reasonable?
If they said, if you don't start paying that back, you get no more welfare, yes, that's absolutely reasonable.
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah, it absolutely is. If you're coming to me every day saying, I need money, I need money, I need money, I need money, and finally I say, look, I need some agreement that you're going to pay this back, and you say, that's unreasonable. How dare you ask? And then I'll say, okay, no hard feelings. I'm done giving
Money
you
back?
money. And you're like, that's unreasonable. That's absolutely unreasonable that you would do
Yeah,
that.
no, you shouldn't. If I'm giving you something, you shouldn't like then years in the future say, oh, by the way, can you pay for all this? Can you pay back all the shit from you? Why
Yes.
didn't you tell me in the fucking first
Yes,
place?
yes, we can do that because what we're saying is, did we already give all of that? Yes or no?
Yeah, for
Okay, so we gave that.
yeah, a lot of
And
it.
if Zelensky said, nah, I'm not going to pay it back, were we going to go to war? Were we going to force him to pay it back?
No, we're gonna
Stop giving him more money. Right. That is entirely reasonable
pull our
to
odds
say.
at that.
The argument isn't, oh, we're going to go to war against you to get your money back. The argument is, oh, you still need something from us? Well, now we're going to say that you're going to have to give us something back in return. And if you're like, that's unreasonable to ask for that, it is not. It's entirely reasonable. Absolutely. Again, it's the
I think it is.
analogous situation would be if you're living rent free with me for 3 years and eventually I say, listen, this next year, it's going to be a burden for you to live with me again. So here's what I could do. If you sign an agreement that you'll start paying back the money you owe me from the rent that you've been here for 3 years, then you can stay. Otherwise, no hard feelings, you got to go. Yeah, that would probably piss you off. Why don't I have the right to say that?
I think you have the right to say that, but it's still pissing the other person off.
That's right, it is.
I mean,
So
it's an unreasonable
you're
agreement
the person
from you.
in that scenario, you're the person that desperately needs a place to stay. You're giving me nothing. I'm doing a huge favor to you. Same with Zelensky.
It's unreasonable from Ukraine's perspective, and we're trying to make a
It
peace
may
deal.
be, it is not unreasonable. It might be something that they don't like. I,
No,
I guess
it's
similarly, it would be unreasonable if we don't agree to give $5 trillion to Ukraine. It might be seen as unreasonable if we say things like, hey, you can't torture Russian soldiers. They might find that to be unreasonable. How dare you critique us? There's all sorts of things from the position of, well, if you're just looking at it from what Ukraine wants, yeah, you're absolutely right. That's how negotiations work. A negotiation is two parties that want something, right? They each want individual things, and then they have to negotiate and give up a little to get what the other person wants. You have to have some sort of compromise. That's what the art of negotiation is. Zelensky has nothing to offer, nothing at
what
all.
was
So
Russia giving up in this? What was Russia giving up in this negotiation?
stopping the attacks.
Anything else?
If the United States and Europe wasn't funding Ukraine, and there was a war
That's
that
it.
and there was a war that never ended until one side was eliminated, who would win, Ukraine or Russia?
Probably Ukraine at some point.
You think Ukraine with no outside assistance,
Oh, no
military,
outside assistance? Yeah, no Russia.
right? It wouldn't even be close. So the truth is, Ukraine must rely on the rest of the world to have a chance
That's
militaristically against
insane.
Russia.
Wow. That's it. That's insane to say that like Ukraine just is gonna like be. Sorry. Oh fuck! I lost my train of thought.
But the
No,
point
it's
is, this is how all war negotiations go. Every
but it's
negotiate,
just
like
it's
every
like
war you could look at,
what the no consequences.
the losing side gives up shit. And you could say, well, what's the winning side giving up? Well, no shit. Not near as much. They're going to agree to cease hostilities.
But
That's what they're giving up. Because if
holy
they don't
shit,
agree,
Rob! This is insane. The negotiating tactics is cede everything to the winning side, and the losing side gets fucking basically nothing.
what did
Of course, you're never going to negotiate to be. That's literally what
okay?
you're advocating for.
So then, let's say that
Of course, that's never going to get peace.
let's say
Come
so.
on.
Your argument is so when the world is negotiating the end of the war in World War II with like Germany and Japan. What did the world give up to Germany and Japan?
To Japan?
Yeah, what did they give up to them?
Japan didn't get their leaders arrested,
Oh,
so like the emperor got to stay
cool.
in a lot of
Okay,
the.
so Russia would say we're not going to arrest Zelensky. There, they gave something up.
And then, and of course, they thought there was more nuclear bombs, and also
Yep,
Russia was coming
Ukraine
in
thinks
from
that there's more
Manchuria at that
invasion
point.
that Russia will eventually wipe them out. So Russia agrees to stop the hostilities. Got it.
And then Germany basically got nothing because they were gone at
But
that
why
point.
would they negotiate? You just said that there would never be a peaceful settlement if both sides aren't giving something up. So if Germany got nothing, how do you explain that? So we're still at war? There's still World War II going on? Germany's still at war with the world? Right? According to your logic.
No, the war would be over.
Why?
Germany would go. Yeah, Hitler was dead at that point.
So wait a
The
minute, but
entire
you
the
just
entire
said
place
that
would come
Germany,
from.
you just said that no country would negotiate, even if they're blatantly losing the war. They would never agree to a peaceful terms if they don't get something in return other than the end of hostilities. That's what you said.
With Ukraine, yeah.
No, you said no war. That's what you said.
I'll add some qualifications, and I will change my argument if that's okay with you, Rob.
Why is it just unique to Ukraine that this war is different than all other wars in history?
I think at certain points in wars, when obviously I don't think Ukraine is like terribly losing this war right now. Ukraine obviously has some position to still negotiate and still has a significant backing from Europe. Versus Germany on its last leg, hit their leader dead with no clear leadership is completely different in negotiation stances. Do you agree?
So, yes. And
Okay.
which was exactly my argument that what sets this apart, the only reason that there's currently basically a stalemate, though Ukraine's slightly losing more every day, the only reason is because the rest of the world is funding it. And so therefore they need to negotiate with the rest of the world. So why
Okay,
should the
so
rest of the why so if you're going to be a dickhead like Zelensky and call out Trump and Vance like this publicly, when you're literally relying on them, they'll say, okay, no hard feelings, you're on your own. Then what does their position look like? Now they're like Germany, where they don't have a prayer. Then what's that negotiated peace settlement going to look like? Far worse. So when
No, it's not gonna.
Zelensky's saying,
No. What
so
it's
when the
gonna look
leader
like
of,
is
let me finish.
the
So when
ramping
the
up
leader
the
of
war.
Ukraine,
That's what it's gonna
when the
look
leader
like.
of Ukraine is saying, nope, there will be no ceasefire until we get an agreement that the side that is winning right now, Russia, must pay for everything in the war, and there are security guarantees like us entering NATO that need to be entered into. Both are things that Russia will never agree with. Then that means that the war is not going to end until Russia inflicts more damage, to
Because
which the
Zelensky,
United States, let me finish,
I'm
to
not
which the
denying
United
Zelensky's
States
being
and Europe
unreasonable.
will have to perpetually pay just to keep Ukraine in a stalemate so that hundreds of thousands more of their men could be conscripted and go to the meat grinder and die until Ukraine eventually cries uncle and says, okay, we're willing to negotiate, at which point they'll be in a weaker position for negotiation and they're going to have to accept a shittier deal. That's what's about to happen.
World War III, as Europe wants to get involved with boots on the ground, which would be even worse, and there's an even more ramping up the war. And this is my problem,
Let
right?
them have
I
it.
understand. I understand that Ukraine's being unreasonable in these negotiations, but the only thing that Trump has come in here is doing is continuing to piss off Ukraine and continue and just
I
ceding more
don't
to
give a
Russia.
fuck.
And
I
he's
don't,
not
just
going
like
through
I
the peace
don't give a
deal.
fuck. Just like if you're
You
living at my
don't
house
give a
rent
fuck
free.
about settling the war.
That's
You
not
just
true at all. That's not true at all. What I give a fuck is, one, the concerns of the American people first and foremost. I'm tired of the American people being bilked and having to sacrifice to send billions of dollars to foreign nations for no benefit of ourselves. Much of that money that's being embezzled and used for corrupt reasons. I'm fucking tired of it. Second, I'm even more disgusted that that's going to continue perpetuating a war that's leading to the death of innocent people that are Ukrainian and Russian by the millions that are dying. I want the United States to stop immediately. I think that Trump should. You're right. Trump should have
okay.
never.
Your
You're
last
absolutely
point,
right.
Rob.
You're
Your last
absolutely.
point.
Shut up.
Your last
Shut up. I'll
point.
just mute you. Shut. You're absolutely right that it was
Of
wrong
course
for
you're
Trump to
muted.
offer this deal. I said as much several days ago. I said instead what Trump should say is, "You're not getting another dime from us. Point. Period. End of story." Now, do you want to negotiate with Russia or not? That's what I'd have said. Then the war would have ended because Ukraine would have said, we have no fucking chance. If Europe says, nope, we refuse to accept that, we're going to finance, then that's their problem. But that's the best chance for a peaceful resolution. For the United States
How
to
can you
stop funding it.
how can
You're
you
the one who
cry
doesn't give a
for
shit.
Russians and Ukrainians dying after admitting that Europe probably will continue to fund Ukraine
That's
in the
on Europe.
stalemate
I
if
can't
America
control.
completes
I
backs
can't
out?
control.
Come on,
I,
that's
I
perpetuating the
can't
dying.
control.
You can't
I
complete that
cannot
point.
control. I cannot control what Europe does. I'm not willing to go to war with Europe.
Then
I'm
don't
not.
tweet
Are
about
you willing? Are you
Ukrainians
willing to go
dying.
to
You
war?
don't care
Are you
about them.
willing to
You've
go to
admitted
war
that.
with?
You only care about Americans.
You need to keep beating your wife, Rob, because if you don't, your neighbor will beat her harder. Yeah, I don't give a fuck. It's an unpersuasive
What
argument.
did I say? Okay. I never
It's
said that.
unpersuasive. Your argument that we can't pursue peaceful resolution because we have to kiss Zelensky's ass and we have to keep funding it and we can't ask for anything back in return because that'll piss off Zelensky. Because if we don't do that, then Europe will continue funding the war just like we are. I don't give a fuck.
Oh, we should ask for things back in return. What we could do is say, hey, we'll invest in you, Ukraine, economically with the
I don't give a fuck
knowing
about
that
that.
long
No.
term we'll get that back
No,
through trade.
You're a globalist. You don't give a fuck about the plight of the American people. No, I'm not stealing money from the American people by the hundreds of billions to send it to Ukraine without anything guaranteed in back.
Yeah, I don't. Me being globalist doesn't mean I don't care about Americans.
Yeah, it means that you don't care about them any more than people around the world. So your argument would be finance any war around the world if you thought those people were noble and you wouldn't give a shit that because money's less important than lives over there. So you would fund wars all across the world for causes that you thought were justified. By the way, you'd be wrong in probably around half of those. But that's what you would do. You don't give a fuck.
What words do you think I would
explain?
fund
I
around
just
the
want you to
world?
explain to me if it's.
Give me an example of a war you think I want to fund.
Would you
right
agree
now.
that one of Zelensky's preconditions that we're talking about here is Russia paying for the entire war? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's unreasonable.
Okay, but you agree that's what they're doing.
Yes.
What percentage of chance do you give of Russia agreeing to that?
It's never gonna happen.
Okay, so then there's zero chance for peace no matter what, anyways.
No, well, if Trump is really coming here, what I'm saying, trying to actually stop this war and make peace, what he should do is say, hey, Russia, we're going to try and make a best deal for you, but understand there might be a little bit of concessions from the initial territorial gains that you have so that we can at least get Zelensky to, like, talk to you guys.
Russia's going to say, yeah, we're not going to do that, dog, because we're going to win this war. Thanks.
They think they're going to win? Okay. And then at that point, Trump could go, well, then we're gonna we're gonna fund Ukraine, or you could
That's
have
cool.
a
Russia will
slight
say,
fair
that's
vote.
cool. We're going to eventually win. Eventually, there's enough people in your country that'll get upset with you siphoning the treasury of the United States off just so people could die in Ukraine. We're going to keep going. The only chance, there's only two options.
I don't think Russia would act like that. I think
Well,
Russia would understand it.
why haven't they stopped in the past 3 years? It's almost like they know we're going to win eventually the way things are going. Right?
I think the reason that they haven't stopped in the past 3 years is num number one, political tensions in America. So Biden's been weak, not fully supporting. And then I'd say number two, they know that Putin doesn't actually care about how this affects the Russian people, and he knows even if we eventually have to come to peace later, we might just finish invading.
I mean, so your position is Zelensky's totally unreasonable and has unreasonable terms that would never be agreed to, and Putin's totally unreasonable and doesn't give a shit about his own people, and he'll just keep fighting no matter what. But the problem is that Trump asked for a mineral deal.
Yeah, if Trump's trying to come in here, actually, he's heightening the tensions. Exactly. Why would you
it's
do?
stupid. By the way, the mineral
Absolutely.
deal would have actually
Absolutely.
increased security because it would have been allowed Trump to make the argument to the American people. Now our financial stake is being attacked by Russia because we own half of these minerals. So it would have been tantamount to a security agreement. And what's the difference if you say, oh, well, paying us back that way is unacceptable, but paying us back in what you called a trade deal would have been acceptable? It's stupid, childish point. It's stupid.
Because we're actually paying them, right? What we're doing then is that we're limiting their productive capacity, which they can use to invest back into the Ukrainian people.
So they don't like the deal. They can go elsewhere. Europe will give it to them for free.
Ukrainian people suffer.
Europe will give it to them for free. It's not making the Ukrainian people suffer. What's making the Ukrainian people suffer is that we've continued to finance this so that there would be an intentional stalemate, because the truth is the people in our establishment don't give a fuck about the people of Ukraine. They give a shit about hurting Russia. And they understand as long as they fund this to the point, let me finish. They understand as long as they fund this war to the point of a stalemate, that it'll keep Russia perpetually fighting in it, but there's no chance that Ukraine will ever actually win. And so it harms Russia, and they don't give a shit about the people of Ukraine. That's the truth. If they cared, then why didn't they send more?
Yeah, I'm not even denying that. Biden was fucking weak. I don't even think I never.
Why doesn't Europe send more if they care?
I think they do care. I think they know that as long as America's also doing something, that they don't have to send as much. But now that
wait. How does it? So you know that the amount of money that was being sent under the Biden administration was insufficient for Ukraine to win the war, right?
Yeah.
Now, is there any reason that you would know more than the countries in Europe?
No.
So you would presume that they know that as well.
Yeah, to some
but
extent,
they truly care about the Ukrainian people.
I don't think they truly care about.
You just said they did. You said I do think they care about the Ukrainian
No,
people.
I think Ukraine winning the war is in their interest. I don't think they have like their giant global hearts out for their
what's
Ukrainian
really
people.
in their interest isn't Ukraine winning the war, it's harming Russia. They want to make sure that Russia is weak and can't come after them.
Yep.
If the war ended tomorrow, that's not in their interest then. Because then Russia stops losing troops.
If they're not losing troops, they could build up and then they could reinvade.
Right. So then it would seem that both the Biden administration and our European allies weren't actually interested as the top priority of Ukraine winning. They were interested in Ukraine dragging it out as long as possible.
I'm kind of skeptical about the Biden claim. I think a lot of the reason that Ukraine wasn't getting a lot of funding is because it was very unpopular. It's hard to get bills passed.
So at one point, it was very popular Ukrainian. What ended up happening was once we saw what was going on, that it was just going to be perpetual funding. By the way, let's say then, what would winning look like for Ukraine? So we send more money, and so enough money to, what's winning look like for Ukraine? Are they attacking Russia?
They captured the Donetsk and Luhansk regions.
Okay, but they don't go into Russia. They just capture it, they fortify it.
Yep.
How much money would that cost? Give me a ballpark.
I have no idea.
So there's been hundreds of billions sent. You said Europe spent even more. So if the United States has spent $350 billion in munitions and money, then I'm guessing you're saying that Europe sent even more. So that's what, $1 trillion?
Give me a sec. It's less than a trillion. I'm guessing. My guess estimate it would be like 500 billion.
Okay. So would we need to triple that, quadruple it?
Probably just like got it. Europe sends like 65 billion. I think we sent like 100.
You just said Europe spent more.
Yeah. Wait. No, Europe sent 65 billion, so we sent like 50 billion. Let me look at the CRS report real quick. Well, even less, 6.3.
Is that just straight cash?
DoD has provided 6.3 in security assistance to Ukraine under the Ukraine Security Assistance.
So how much are you claiming that they sent?
Yeah. 6.3. That's from the State Department.
6.3 billion. That's what your claim is.
Yep, that's from the State
I
Department.
think you're okay. That's from one agency. Okay.
The agency that would oversee these payments, right?
Okay. Since Russia's invasion in February 2020, the United States has allocated 113.4 billion in emergency funding to Ukraine. Can you explain the discrepancy in those two numbers? 60 billion's been spent so far. On February 13th, 2024, the Senate National Security Act of 2024 will allocate approximately $60 billion for Ukraine.
Yeah, okay.
As of December 31st, the U.S. has provided more than $64 billion in security assistance since the invasion. Additionally,
6.5 billion was in straight cash, and then the rest.
So we've sent the value of roughly $65 billion.
Yeah.
So you were off. You were off by a factor of 10.
I was wrong. Yeah.
Okay. How much did Europe send?
The EU member states have. European leaders have agreed to commit, and that's agreed.
Trump claims that it was 350 billion. Other reports are suggesting it's maybe 183 billion. Around 90 billion of that's been dispersed.
So 73 billion from
Ukraine's the World Economy's Ukraine support tracker calculates the United States has allocated 119.8 billion.
He's suggesting 8 billion or 800 billion.
119.8 billion.
And
now you say Europe spent more than that. So how much have they spent? No, that's what, and I'm quoting, the Kiel Institute for World Economy's Ukraine support tracker.
Yeah, I'm going to take the State Department's over.
Yeah, the State Department, you're full of shit because the State Department's just talking about money they're sending. No one even credibly, even the fucking bills that were voted on earmarks far more than what you say, 6.5 billion.
No, I said 65 billion.
Well, then, since you're so intelligent, so we've sent 65 billion. How much would it take? Do we need to double that, triple that, quadruple it, quintuple it? How much would it take for the Ukraine to not just drive Russia out, but then successfully defend the entire territory in perpetuity? How much roughly do you think that would cost?
Double it.
Double it. Okay, year after year?
Let's say for the next year and a half.
Okay, so after a year and a half, we stop spending the money, and then what happens? Russia just says, we give up. No more money coming in from the United States.
After that, we do something like a Marshall Plan.
And explain what that would look like.
That'd be going into Ukraine, investing in businesses, building up their economy.
Sure, we invest businesses. Okay, Russia says we're going to invade. Then what happens?
Well, at that point, they would have joined NATO.
You want them to join NATO, which Russia's saying a non-starter, which will lead to World War III.
Well, if they've already won at that point, and then they join NATO, then Russia can invade.
Does Russia have nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
You're saying that Putin doesn't give a shit about his own people.
I think he does.
You think he does give a shit about his people?
I never said that. I said that if we were to win the war, and if we were to...
No, you're changing. You previously said Putin doesn't care about his people.
Well, I think he cares about his interests. He doesn't care about...
Okay, he cares about his interests. Do you think that Putin would look at it as a red line if NATO was literally on his border?
Yeah, he could feel...
Okay,
and so he wouldn't be unreasonable enough to launch little nukes over.
Why? If he literally thinks this is the end for me, and I don't give a shit about my people, why wouldn't he do
it? So, wait, is Finland on their border, right?
Not in the same way, right? Like Ukraine, it's long been known that Russia said, this is it. If Ukraine joins NATO, that's it.
Yeah, but they make a lot of fake threats too.
Okay.
They said that if we supported Ukraine, that they were
I mean,
threatening nuclear weapons.
your position is nonsensical. It's just
It's
nonsensical.
nonsense.
Russia's winning. The pie in the sky. People like, if we doubled the amount of money and it didn't solve, you'd say, well, just double that. And if that didn't solve it, you'd say, well, double that again. And if that didn't do it, you'd say, you know what the problem is? We need to double it again. No one could ever answer it. Ukraine's running out of manpower. Then what? What happens when they're out of
Yeah,
men?
if Russia invades Ukraine and it's like, oh my gosh, we invade Ukraine, it's like, well, we just need to be more diplomatic, and then they invade, and then they
No,
invade
I
her, and
think
like,
what we should have done was been more diplomatic before we
diplomacy,
expanded.
guys, diplomacy, Trump's diplomacy is gonna fix it.
Okay, did you support the Iraq War? In retrospect, I know you were young.
I didn't.
Can you name me any war
No,
that you've ever
no,
been against that the United States was engaged in? Did you support NATO attacking Libya?
no. Iraq, the shit we're doing in Syria now is really dumb.
Why? Oh, what? Oh, just negotiate appeasement. Just appeasing. You think Assad's a good guy? That's just appeasement. You're just appeasing Assad. You think Gaddafi was a good guy? You think Saddam was a good guy? Appeasement. That's all you say. Negotiation. Appeasement. Why were those bad
Well,
ideas?
those were bad ideas because all we did is we went in there and we just completely destabilized the country.
Oh, really? You don't say so. It'll be different this time.
I don't know, why can't we go back to the days where we did things like the Marshall Plan?
Because we're not in the same position that we were after World War II. We're struggling mightily back home. We're running up deficits that are incredible, that are insane.
We were
The
running
United
up
States is
insane
not the
deficit.
unique world
The amount of
superpower.
deficits we were running up in World War II?
Right. After post-World War II, the
Insane.
United States was clearly the world superpower by itself. Because one, we had the technology with things like nuclear bombs. Second, we were only one of the only world superpowers whose landmass wasn't directly affected by the war other than Pearl Harbor. The United States has declined both with soft power and hard power ever since the height of our power, probably circa 1970.
I'd agree,
In the
but that
70s.
doesn't. You think that means that we're not so powerful enough to fund Ukraine and warrant, and then back them financially?
No, that's exactly what I'm saying. The American people could not afford it. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And by the way, all of this comes from the position that you're saying. You're saying all of this comes from the position. All of this comes from the position that you're criticizing Trump because Zelensky is unreasonable and unwilling to ever accept peace. Because how dare Trump ask for money back? It's nonsensical. Now you're saying the same thing would be said. The argument would be if we send any of this money to Ukraine, it would be incredibly selfish of us to ever ask for any of that money back. So we wouldn't get that money back.
Rob, it's nonsensical to say that we shouldn't heighten tensions and are already.
It is absolutely nonsensical to say that we need to, in perpetuity, fund Ukraine and asking for a deal to get some of that money back would trigger Zelensky to the point where he would act a fool, and we should have known that because if we don't, the guy that's unwilling to take any peaceful negotiation anyways, which you've already admitted he has non-starters that Russia would never agree to, would just get the same funding that we're giving now from Europe. In other words, if we don't ask for things, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. If we ask for things that benefit the American people, the worst thing that will happen is we'll keep the status quo, except instead of the American people funding this, it'll be Europe. I say good. Still benefits the American people. Ukraine's in the exact same position tomorrow as they are today. Everybody wins. Great.
Yeah, so it's so fun. The funny to me is like at the start of Ukraine, like, oh, we need to have peace in the we need new peace. It's not Middle East. Peace in Europe. We can't all these people, all these innocent people dying in Ukraine.
Yes.
And it's like, oh, but Europe's still gonna do it. They're still gonna die anyway. So yeah.
No, I don't believe you. I don't believe you.
You didn't even answer the question I asked. I think it's entirely reasonable for me to say.
I don't believe you. That's the difference. That's the difference. We're operating in your fantasy world where Europe will come in and instantly refill the coffers of munitions, which they're incapable of doing, and money that the United States has been doing, or even more. I don't believe that would occur. I think that's bullshit, but I'm entertaining your hypothetical that would occur. And I'm saying, okay, so scenario one is the United States keeps funding this. We never ask for anything back. Zelensky continues to have unreasonable demands. The war continues. People in Ukraine and Russia continue to die. That's scenario one. Or we ask for something back and Europe steps in and does the exact same thing, and the outcomes are all exactly the same. I say, okay, we might as well try to benefit the American people. I would say that you have no proof whatsoever that Europe's going to go in and totally do what the United States is doing now. And it seems to be that the evidence is on my side of that, because if you're right that this was such an unreasonable mineral deal that would have pissed Zelensky off, he would have never entertained it if he knew that Europe was ready, willing, and able to give him the same deal that the United States was. He would say, I'm not going to give up $200 billion of mineral deals to the United States. Why would you just piss that money away if Europe's willing to do the same thing? The truth is because you know they're not capable. And so do I, and so does Zelensky, and so does Trump, and so does Putin. Everybody knows that. Now, you could pretend and say, no, in my hypothetical, Europe's ready and able to do the same thing, and they'll jump in. In fact, they'll even fund more, and it'll make Ukraine even more powerful. And the only reason they haven't done that yet is because they see the United States and blah, blah. Bullshit. You already admitted that Europe's not concerned whatsoever with Ukraine winning the war. Instead, they want a stalemate to be dragged out as much as possible so that Russia loses as many lives as possible, which would mean that they're not going to increase the funding to the levels that you're suggesting, which would make the situation even worse. They would perpetuate what we already see occurring because they have the same goal that the United States and the Biden administration had. The only people that truly are trying to have a peaceful resolution is Trump, who you're criticizing because he went after because Zelensky acted like a bitch and attacked him, and Trump rightfully called him out and acknowledged that Zelensky was never interested in a ceasefire. That's the truth. And you think that Trump should be criticized for the sin of asking that the American people not have to foot the bill and they get something back in return. I disagree with you. Last word.
Yeah, last word. So it's completely insane if you say, "Oh, Zelensky has non-starters. Russia has non-starters. Russia was like asking Ukraine, like, yeah, to give up all your territorial concessions." You're like, "Fuck no, fuck off."
Russia's coming from a position of strength. The Ukraine isn't.
Russia is coming in. You're criticizing Ukraine for having non-starters, or is that Russia's never going to accept. I agree with that. You need to also admit that Russia is coming in with non-starters for Ukraine to accept.
Nothing is a non-starter.
Trump is coming in here. He is not being this master negotiator.
You are just so dumb.
Dude, I can do this. We can get this done. He's full-throatedly supporting one side of the negotiation, kind of pissing off the other side, and nothing is getting done.
You can keep ranting if you want. Nothing is a non-starter if you're going to win the war. Nothing is a non-starter if you're going to win the war. For example, do you think that Japan would have said it was a non-starter that they had to demilitarize with negotiations into World War II? Do you think they would have said that's a fucking non-starter? Yet they did it. Why? Why did they do that? That was clearly a non-starter to Imperial Japan. Why did they do it? Why did they do it?
We dropped 2 nukes on them.
So then all of a sudden it was a starter once they lost the war. Because the army in the position of strength gets to dictate the terms. So to say Ukraine would never accept that may be true. And Russia will say, fair enough, we'll continue the war. See you in Kiev. Then all of a sudden it'll look like a starter. Then as they lose more and more, and they run out of young men to fight the war, all of a sudden it'll look like a starter.
Trying to suggest that Ukraine is anywhere in the position that Japan was at the time is ludicrous. Japan had lost their it is. Japan had lost their entire empire. They had no resources left. They had no backing from any other country. They've been just nuked twice. Russia was on their fucking ass, and America's preparing to invade. And you're trying to say that, Rob, you're trying to say that's even close to similar as
close to similar.
In a stalemate of war with Russia, who is very, very slowly losing and still has the backing of the entirety of the EU. It's the same as what the same situation Japan is. Absolutely fucking not. They obviously have more of a leg to stand on when it comes to going to the negotiation table.
The reason that it's analogous to that, you're right, no two things are ever exactly the same. The reason it's analogous because the only reason Ukraine ever had a chance in the first place is because the entirety of the Western world was funding their efforts to do so. They're running out of manpower. They literally won't have people, no matter how much money or weapons are sent to them soon, if the war continues at the pace that it was. And if they're going to treat their allies like shit, like they just did to the United States, they will quickly find themselves in a position where they have no fucking chance. And when the leader of the free world in the United States, Donald Trump, says, listen, we're going to have a ceasefire right now, and that means you're going to have to give some shit up because Russia's coming at it from a position of strength, but we're going to try to get you the best deal possible. And you say, nah, dog, that's a non-starter. Russia has to pay for everything, and we have to go into NATO, and Russia's like, fuck that. Then yes, they'll quickly find themselves in that position. As Trump said, it has nothing to do with bias. 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 I'm
simply
just
shit
gonna
on
mute you. I'm
Ukraine.
just gonna
You
mute you.
can't put any impetus on
I'm gonna
Putin
mute
for
you.
the
Your
fact that
last
an immediate
chance.
offering isn't anywhere
Okay.
close,
All
anywhere
right.
close.
Done. Right.
You done?
Cool.
You
No.
done?
So it has nothing to
Yeah, of
do with
course.
bias. It's reality that the side that's in the position of strength will get more favorable terms. And so, what are the terms that are non-starter that Russia is asking for? By the way, go ahead.
Uh, all the territory they have in Ukraine,
Right.
they
I
want
would
back.
say that's a starter, and they're probably likely to get that.
That's a non-starter for Ukraine.
Well, I bet it's not. If they accept the terms of that deal, then it wouldn't be a non-starter, would
Holy
it?
shit! Wait, how many parties are in a negotiation, Rob?
Well, in this case, there'll be three.
Just be
There'll
three,
be
correct?
the two sides at war and the side that's funding the war for the one side.
Okay, so there's three. There's the three parties in this negotiation.
Yes.
Okay, is the point of a negotiation to cede basically everything that one side wants to
No,
one?
the point of the negotiation is for both sides to get something they want. Ukraine wants to not be
Yeah.
wiped off the face of the earth. Russia wants to keep the territory they've already received. So Russia will
Mm-hmm.
give up wiping Ukraine off the face of the earth, and Ukraine will give up the territory that's already been ceded. Now, what's likely to happen is, if they're in a favorable position with the United States, that maybe some of that territory will be returned. But no doubt in any negotiation, even Zelensky has admitted that they're willing to negotiate possibly giving up some of the land that's been taken. Even he admitted it, which you're saying is a non-starter.
The
In
amount
what
that they're
world do
asking
you
for,
think
yeah.
that there's any
The amount
sort of
that they're asking for,
negotiation?
absolutely.
In what world do you think there's any sort of negotiation that Russia agrees to that Ukraine doesn't give up any land? So Russia's winning, and they're going to say,
I
"We're
think
going to
that's
give
it's
you
enough to say
everything
they
you
should
want."
give up all of it.
Okay, so
I
then
don't think
Russia
the
started.
problem is I don't disagree with you, Rob, that Ukraine here is going to have to give up more than what
Okay,
Russia is
so
going to
so
get.
then
I don't
so then
disagree.
Ukraine
The problem that I
Ukraine
have
comes
with
in.
you, Rob,
So
is that
Russia
what you're
comes in
saying
and
is
says,
that
well,
Ukraine
Russia comes in
just
and
needs to
says
give up
we want to
everything.
keep
Fuck
all
them.
of
They
it.
lost. Who cares what they
Russia
have to
comes.
give up?
No,
Obviously, they still need
not
to
what
get
I said
something
at
out
all.
of this.
That's not what I
Obviously,
said
they're
at all.
not just going
That's
to
not
give
what
it
I
up
said at all.
just for the
So,
prospect
thank you.
of not
It's my
getting wiped
channel.
off the
Go
face
fuck
of the.
yourself. Okay, that's not what I said at all. What I said was that Ukraine is coming from a position of weakness, both in negotiations with the United States and in negotiations with Russia. So their demands, we demand all of our land back, would be nonsensical. Their demand that we demand that Russia pay for everything would be nonsensical. Russia's going to say, okay, we're negotiating for a position of strength. We're unwilling to accept the terms of that. Russia's going to come in and they're going to say, we want to keep everything we have. And we have other demands. And the United States is going to say, okay, let's say you give up some of that for more favorable terms for Ukraine. But what you get to do is you get to keep this portion of the land, and we'll sign an agreement that Ukraine will never enter NATO. Those sorts of things are what occurs. You're saying that I'm biased against Ukraine is laughable. The world is biased against Ukraine. Logic is biased against Ukraine. Human nature is biased against Ukraine because the side that's approaching the negotiations from the losing, less powerful side doesn't get to make demands that are laughable for the other side. For example, let's say Ukraine's deal was, here's our negotiating. We say Russia pays for everything, Russia leaves, and Russia gives us half of their country. And you'd be like, well, that's a good negotiating tactic because, Russia, Russia would laugh at that because they'd say, we're winning the fucking war. We don't give a fuck. It's terms of surrender, basically, is what we're dealing with. And the best thing that could be hoped for, and it would have been better if it occurred 2 years ago, was actually for some sort of negotiation to happen then, when Russia had less land that they had conquered. Maybe the negotiation there would have been, okay, you get to keep 80% of the land you've already conquered to end the war. Maybe that would have ended it. We don't know because those negotiations were sabotaged because people that you supported said, no, keep the war going. We must win. It's a non-starter. You can't allow them to keep that land. Okay? So then Russia advances further and further and more Ukrainians die. Now we're at the position where it's like, okay, and Zelensky's like, nope, Russia has to pay for everything, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, yeah, Russia's saying they want to keep the land they already have as a non-starter. Okay, Ukraine can adopt that position, say, no, that's a non-starter, we refuse to take it. Russia will say, fair enough, and then they'll continue to encroach further and further and further. That's what's going to happen. It'll be even worse now because the leader of Ukraine just alienated the United States in a foolish dumbass move. Meanwhile, as a United States citizen, my primary concern is the people of the United States. I think that wars like this wouldn't have started if the United States wasn't monkeying in the affairs of countries around the world. But I think wars always will start at some degree. And I'm concerned about the people of the United States. Over and over, what we see is the United States intervenes in these situations, what ends up usually exacerbating the situation and making it worse and more people dying. And then it also has the added effect of being a burden on the people, the working class of the United States. So it can enrich people in the military industrial complex and politicians and shit that are getting kickbacks from all of this shit. That's who ends up benefiting. Doesn't benefit the American people. I'd like that shit to stop. If your argument is trying to benefit the American people is bad because then Europe will step in and we'll be in the same position we are now, that's fucking stupid. All right. Seems like Scratch rage quit, bitched out.